All right, so we're going to be doing section 2.1c, like I mentioned earlier, solving absolute value equations. Now, when we do absolute value equations, we have to know a couple little things. Okay, first thing you guys have to know is that absolute values, so let me write this down here. Absolute values return, in other words, the answers, positive answers. Okay, what do I mean by that? That means that if I write like the absolute value of 2, it's 2. The absolute value of negative 2 is also 2. Okay? If I write the absolute value of negative a, my answer should be a. Okay? Why is it that the absolute value is always positive? The reason is because by definition, the absolute value is the distance from 0. Okay? So let me put that right here. Definition of the absolute value. So definition of the absolute value is the distance from 0 on a number line. Okay? So the distance from 0 on a number line. So anytime you see absolute value, they're asking you what's the distance, and then they put the number inside. That means from that number. Okay. So can distance ever be negative? Like, do you ever travel negative 3 miles? No, right? You just travel 3 miles in a different direction, right? If you travel 3 miles north, then you can travel 3 miles south. No one says you did negative distance, right? You don't run a mile in one direction and then run the mile back and then you say, I didn't travel at all, right? Well, maybe you didn't move from the beginning to end, but you did move 2 miles, right? There is no negative distance. So make sure you guys remember that. Distance can never be negative, okay? And that's going to be important for one of the first examples I give you guys. But distance can never be negative. Now, just to kind of show you this definition, the distance from 0 on a number line, let me just make a small little number line. I won't make a huge one here. We'll put 0 right here. 1, 2, negative 1 here, negative 2. So if I were to say, what is the absolute value of negative 1, what I'm saying is, how far away is negative 1 from 0? Well, how many jumps did that take to go from negative 1 to 0? It just took 1. That's why the distance is 1, right? If I say, what's the absolute value? What's the absolute value of 2? Well, that means you got to go once, twice, 2 different jumps, right? That's why it's 2. Okay? It's not because it's magic. I know sometimes some teachers will tell you like, ooh, the absolute value magically makes every number positive. But not really. By definition, it's a distance. The distance from 0. All you got to know is how far away it is from it, right? So what would be the absolute value of negative 9? 9, because you would take 9 different jumps to go from negative 9 to negative 8, negative 7, negative 6, negative 5, negative 4, negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, and 0. 9 hops to get there. Okay? 9 units to move from negative 9 to 0. So anytime you guys see an absolute value, you're thinking distance from 0. Okay? And yes, the answer will always be positive, but not because it's magic, but because distance can't be negative. That's all. Okay? So it leads me to the first quick example, and then we're going to change gears really quick to how to solve these things. But if you ever see anything like this, okay, it says solve the absolute value of x is equal to negative 3. Now they're saying the distance from x to 0 is negative 3. Does that make sense? The distance is negative 3? No, distance can't be negative. I don't care what x is. Who cares? Your absolute value can never equal a negative number, because the absolute value is distance. Distance should always be positive. Okay? So this right here, we're going to write no solution. Okay? Why? Because of this piece right here. Let me just write it down. Absolute value can never be negative. Okay? So the absolute value can never be negative. Now, there might be some negative numbers in one of the equations, and you might be able to move stuff around to make it positive, but here, I can't do anything to it. Okay? It's just a negative distance. It can't have negative distance. All right. Any questions on this one? Because right now we're going to go into how to solve the ones you can solve. This one I cannot solve. It's impossible. Okay? So here we go. How to solve for these things. How to solve for absolute value. Okay? So absolute values, they always come in pairs. Okay? They always come in pairs. What do I mean by that? You can get the same answer from positive and negative numbers. Okay? So just to kind of write something here to the side, just to kind of understand what I'm saying. The absolute value of 2 is 2. But isn't that the same as the absolute value of negative 2 as well? Right? The absolute value of 10 is 10. But that's also the same answer as the absolute value of negative 10. Okay? So anytime you do the absolute value, when you solve for it, you can do a positive and a negative spin on it. Right? A positive and a negative spin will work. So even with letters, the absolute value of x is just x. But so is the absolute value of negative x. So what that tells me is every absolute value can be solved for the same answer 2 different ways. A positive way and a negative way. So how do we do that? So what you're going to do, and I'm going to kind of show you the how-to, and then we'll implement it. That way you guys understand it. Okay? Let's say you have something like this. I know that looks weird because we're not doing anything with numbers, but just bear with me. So you have the absolute value of x equal to some number c. I don't know what the number is. Okay? This is how you do it. Split it into 2 equations. One of which will equal a negative answer. Now I know you're thinking, wait a minute, you said we can't have negative answers. Well, we got to play around with the way we split it. So I'm gonna show you that right now. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna split this thing into 2 different equations. So the bad news is that you guys have 12 problems, but every one of these, actually not every one, but almost every one of these becomes 2 different problems. So you almost have 24 problems for homework. Okay, even though it's just 12. Okay, we'll do some. Okay, but just know that every one of these kind of turns into double. Okay, because look what happens. I'm going to rewrite this problem. X equals c. Notice all I did was I erased the absolute values. I just wrote x equals c. And then x equals negative c. Then you solve. Now you might say, well, how the heck am I going to solve that? Well, you're not these. But we'll do it right now with actual problems. Okay? All right, so here we go. This will be example number 2. All right, so what if I give you, let's say absolute value of m is equal to 8. We're going to start really easy, okay? And then we're going to move on. This is like a really easy one. So I told you guys, if you're going to solve these things, make sure your absolute value is all by itself. So there it is, all by itself. And then you're going to break it up into 2 parts, okay? So the first one is just get rid of the absolute value and write it the way it looks. The other equation is get rid of the absolute value or write it as a negative answer. Now, can I do anything else to solve these? Or are they already solved? They're already solved. I can't add anything. I can't. So I'm done. That's it. I'm finished. Okay? Those are the 2 answers. Now, if you're thinking, well, how do I know if I'm right? Well, is the absolute value of 8 equal to 8? Yeah. Is the absolute value of negative 8 equal to 8? Yeah. So I know my answers are right. Okay? Let's move on. Let's make it a little more challenging. So what if I say the absolute value of 10 plus n is equal to 16? The absolute value of 10 plus n is equal to 16. I'm not going to change my process. I want to make sure the absolute value is all by itself. So it is. It's on the left side. There's no number multiplying it. There's nothing like adding it on the outside. Nothing like that. So I'm going to break it up into 2 equations. 10 plus n equals 16. Right? One of them is positive. 10 plus n equals negative 16. The other one is negative answer, right? And then I'm going to solve. So to solve the first one, I just got to move the 10 to the other side, right? Since 10 is positive, it becomes a minus. So 16 minus 10, that's 6. And then I'll do the same thing with the other one. I'm going to get the 10. I'm going to throw it over to the other side. Negative 16 minus 10 is negative 26. And those are my 2 solutions. Okay? It's not that these problems are insanely difficult. You just have to know the process. If you know the process, the problems are easy. When you don't know the process, they get hard. Okay, how do you get to know the process? Practice, right? Do the homework. Don't take pictures of it. Actually do it. Okay, so let me show you another one here. That kind of looks easy, but it is different. What's different with this one that the other ones did not have? Is the absolute value all by itself? No, right? What's next to it? A 9. I got to get rid of that 9. So right now it says 9 times the absolute value of r. How do I get rid of 9 times? Divide. You got to do the opposite, right? Good. So I'm going to divide it out. Divide by 9. That's going to give me the absolute value of r is equal to 1. And now, since the absolute value is all by itself, I can break it apart. Okay? So this is going to be r equals 1 and r equals negative 1. And that's it. I can't do anything else, so I'm done. What do you guys think? Pretty easy? Right? Not too bad. Not too bad. Then you get to switch the page over and then it gets a little more interesting. So we'll see. All right. I'm going to do this one with you guys and let's see if you can catch something, okay? Here we go. Here we go. 2 times the absolute value of n plus 10 is equal to negative 4. Okay? Anything catch your eye? Yeah, it doesn't look right. Maybe I gotta fix something somewhere. Yeah, if you think you got something, raise your hand. That way I can, The absolute value can't be negative, right? Normally I'd say, oh, that's a bad thing, but I see there's a 2 in the front as well. So before I say there's no solution, let me at least isolate the absolute value first. Because maybe if I divide by 2, it becomes positive. It's not, but maybe it does, right? Maybe if I add 5, it becomes positive. I don't know. So I'm going to do one quick operation, and then I'm going to evaluate again. Because right now, what you said is exactly right. It's negative, and we're not supposed to have negative distances, right? But what if, just out of curiosity, what if it was a negative 2, and if I divide both sides by negative 2, would it become a positive answer after that? Yeah, right? So then would it be okay in that case? Yeah, it'd be okay. But first I gotta do what I'm supposed to do, which is fix it. So let's divide by 2. But when I divide by 2, I still have the absolute value equal to a negative number. And can I have that? No. So I'm just gonna write no solution. By the way, if you ever want like a shortcut to writing no solution, you can always do this. Okay? It's like a 0 with a slash, basically saying like there's no answers. Okay? Or you could write no solve if you want, no SOL, that's fine too. Okay? So again, this one looked like it could be kind of difficult, but it wasn't terrible. Let me do one more for you guys, and then I'll give you guys an assignment. That way you can work on it. Here we go. 9 times the absolute value of 6 plus 3m plus 5 is equal to 32. So that's kind of as complicated as it can get. Okay? They have numbers multiplying the absolute value. They got numbers on the outside adding or subtracting to it, equal to something on the right side, right? So we do have to isolate the absolute value. So we got to move things. Okay? The 9, I can divide it out. Okay? But I'd rather wait. Let's get rid of that plus 5 first. Okay? In case you're always like, well, I don't know. Why do you want to get rid of the plus 5 instead of the 9? Okay, why would you do that? A little hint, I don't know if anybody's ever taught you this, but you guys remember, obviously you remember PEMDAS, right? You do this to simplify, right? You go parentheses, exponents, multiplication or division, addition or subtraction. You do that to simplify numbers. To solve, you go backwards, up to here, okay? To solve, you're going to go backwards. You're going to look for addition or subtraction and remove that first. Okay? Then you find your multiplication or division and you remove that next. It just makes it easier on you. So, using reverse order of operations to solve, not to simplify, because simplify goes top down. Solving, you go bottom up. Okay? I'm going to move that plus 5. Okay? So the way I'm going to move the plus 5 is by doing its opposite, minus 5. Okay, notice I'm doing the steps of minuses, okay? Usually I just draw an arrow, but we'll change it around a bit, okay? So 9, absolute value, 6 plus 3m is equal to, well, 32 minus 5, 27. Okay? If I were to divide it by 9, does 32 get divided by 9? No, right? Does 5 get divided by 9? No. I don't want to divide first. Does 27 get divided by 9? Yeah, right? That's why I'd rather move the addition and subtraction, because it might give me better options. So let's divide by 9. Let's get rid of that 9 in front. That gives me absolute value of 6 plus 3m equal to, what's my answer here? 3. Thank you. So now that my absolute value is all by itself, I can break it apart and create 2 different problems. All right? So 6 plus 3m equals to 3. 6 plus 3m equals to negative 3. Remember, it's the answer that becomes positive and negative, not the big part inside of the absolute value. The answer becomes a plus 3 minus 3. Now we just solve. So if I move the 6 over here, I get 3m equals negative 3. Divide both sides by 3, and I get one answer. M is negative 1. Do the same thing on the other side. I'll get the 6, I move it over to the right side. I get 3m equal to, well, negative 3 minus 6, that's negative 9. Then I'll divide both sides by 3. M is equal to negative 3. And I got my two solutions. Now, one time I had a student say, well, Mr. B, hold on, I don't get it. How are you getting negative answers? You said you can't get negative answers. I said, no. The absolute value can't be equal to a negative answer. M is not an absolute value. M is just M. Right? If it would have said absolute value of M equals negative 1, that's a no-no. Can't do that. Right? I can't have negative distances. But just M, X, A, B, whatever, those could be negative. That's fine. Okay? So, how are we doing? Are we okay with this? Hopefully? All right. One real quick hint, because I didn't do one of these, but I know that there's like 2 of them there. So just FYI, let's call it. I'm not going to do the problem, but I am going to kind of show you, okay? If you have a problem, let's say it's something like this. So notice it's a fraction. Okay, I want to get the absolute value all by itself. So I got to move that division by 5. How do I get rid of division by 5? Multiplication, right? So I would want to do times 5 on both sides. That way this will cancel out. And then all you'll have is absolute value of x plus 3 equal to 50, okay? And then from there you break it apart and you find your 2 answers. Okay, but there's a couple problems in your homework where there's a division thing. So just move it over by multiplying, and you should be good. All right? You guys have any questions on any of the examples? All right, so let me go ahead and stop the recording.